Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to the next episode of Breaking into Breaking Bad. This is Clifford Humphrey. I'm here with my brother Caleb Humphrey. We are jumping into season 2, episode 1, titled 737. Before we get started, though, Cabes, do you want to tell people about the Patreon opportunity we got going on now?
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone that doesn't know me, Cabes is my nickname that Cliff actually gave that to me when I was how old was I? I don't know, really young. But yeah, so I know everyone knows me as Caleb, but you hear Cliff say Cabes a lot on the podcast. But I digress. Anyways, yeah, so Patreon, right? We're starting the Patreon account. We're gonna be using it for season 2. We're going to be putting some really cool bonus content on there. At the end of each season, we're going to do like a end of season wrap episode where we're going to put that on there on the Patreon account. For anyone that's on the Patreon subscriber list, we're also going to release the episodes 2 days early. So they normally come out on the Apple Podcast and on YouTube on Wednesday mornings. So this one, if you're on a Patreon, it'll be released on Monday morning. And we'll probably throw some other cool stuff in there, maybe some raffles here and there. And also, one of the things that we want to do is we're going to bring a guest on to the last season, probably first episode, and that person gets to record with Cliff and I. And so we're pumped about it. We're going to see how this goes. But season 1 was a lot of fun, so we're jumping into season 2. So here we go.
Yeah, awesome. So appreciate any support and sharing us on social media and all that helps too. But Caleb and I, we're just doing this for ourselves primarily. We just thought this would be a fun thing to do. So we're not out there to try and make some extra money, but we thought it'd be cool if we could get enough to get a microphone or something for help us with the recording. So that's what we're doing, and we hope this can be something that is fun for other people too. So let's jump into the first episode of season 2, 737. Okay, so where does this episode get its name from, Caves?
So Walt kind of breaks down how much money he wants to make in a kind of like a desperation conversation he has with Jesse after their meeting with Tuco. But they're both freaking out. I think they really see the craziness of Tuco come out in this episode, which you saw a glimpse of in season 1. But yeah, so he breaks down, all right, I need 10 years of bills, college tuition, the whole gambit. And he does the math really quick and he's like, all right, let's do it. We need 11 more drug deals with Tuco, and then we don't have to see him ever again. And so that's where the 737 comes from.
So that's the most likely reason. But this episode begins in a really weird way. What is up with that?
Yeah, the black and white
pool, the swimming pool scene. Yeah, I mean, obviously it becomes, I think, a little bit more clear later on, but it's creepy, right? It's really creepy that
the floating eyeball is
yeah.
Oof,
yeah, and the way you see that stuffed animal, it's like kind of cute, and then it just turns horrifying, right? Like its face burned off.
Yeah, like with the color contrast, with everything's black and white except this teddy bear or something.
Right.
But
I'm not going to give anything away, but
no.
I'm just gonna say that number 737 might relate to something else in the future that has to do with that creepy stuffed animal in the swimming pool. So we'll return to that later on. But I think the most obvious explanation is that it refers to the number, the money that Walt says he needs to come up with. So anyway, we'll get to that. But there's the explanation for the title. So this episode starts with a recap of a scene that we saw already. In fact, when I saw it, I got confused thinking, wait, did I see this episode already? when Tuco beats up and ends up killing, what's his name? Gonzo? Is that his name?
Now Gonzo's the big guy. I'm not actually sure the name of the other one. I don't.
Okay, well, he ends up killing his assistant guy on accident, beats him
Hmm.
up, which I don't know. I guess I thought he probably did that regularly, and so it didn't seem that odd for a guy of his character. But he ends up beating him up in front of Walt and Jesse, and then but then we get to see what else happens in this episode, and that's that the guy they come back and he's dead.
Right. Yeah. Well, not before Tuco was like, "Hey, you're a smart guy, Heisenberg. Do the thing." With his hands. He
Right,
was
right.
trying to be like,
That's right.
and Walt's like,
That's
"They
right.
don't even teach that anymore." And he was trying to get
Yeah,
Jesse to put his mouth
right.
to mouth. Ugh. Yeah.
Let's get our events in order. So they do the deal, and then they drive off with the guy beaten up, right? And while they're
Hmm.
while Jesse and Walt are sitting in the car, that's when Walt calculates. Am I right? That's when he calculates
Correct.
all of the things that he's going to need to pay for, and he comes up with this number $737,000. And he divides that by how much money they're making on each drop, and he decides he needs 11 more drops in order to get the amount that he needs. And this goes back to that same old idea we've been talking about before, where Walt is approaching this in a robotic kind of rationalistic way, and he's thinking, I'm going to kind of hack this system, and I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to get the outcome that I want out of this. And then what I think is amazing is the contrast between sort of how rational it operates in theory in Walt's mind. And then you're confronted with this irrational element of Tuco, who is harming his own interest, right? He kills his own guy by accident out of spite, right? The guy, makes a comment that he takes the wrong way. And so, and then the whole rest of the episode, I think, is a kind of reaction to that scene, right? Because now Walt knows this guy is capable of acting completely irrationally and messing up this
Hmm.
whole beautiful system that I have, constructed in my mind for how this is going to work. And he's utterly dependent. His system, Walt's system, is utterly dependent on that guy acting rationally, and he is not going to act rationally. And
Right, because
so,
that's he kind of remember when they were dealing with Crazy Eight. He was like, he's a businessman. Like what can we do to like rationalize with him? And
that's
he
right.
can't do that with Tuco.
He's
And
a
I think
businessman.
his
Yeah.
whole thing is it's all about the ends justify the means. Whatever the means I got to do to get to that 737, and it turns him and Jesse paranoid throughout the whole episode once they really find out the craziness of Tuco, and he's just
Yeah.
you know
Right. I think that's a good point. And if we can remember in a couple seasons, I think to return to that idea of just the ends justify the means,
hmm
because I think we're going to see that kind of turn on its head a little bit. But okay, one other thing I wanted to mention was when Walt is in the car after the initial drug deal and he's counting up how much he needs and he ends up at 737. We get to see glimpses of Jesse's face and he's super uncomfortable. Why is that?
yeah. Well, I mean, if you remember Jesse's first uh impression of Tuco beat him almost to death, right? And
Right,
then
right,
again, like right when they were leaving, Tuco says to Jesse, but and to Walt says, "We're done. Or you're done." Which to us, the viewers, it looks like he's saying, "You're done here. You guys can go." But the moment Jesse and Walt get back and they can talk this out, the first thing that Jesse says to Walt is, he goes, "You're done." That means like he's talking about us, like we're done. He's gonna get rid of us, and like that was the first like freaking out part. But
hmm.
as far as Jesse in the car, he's more like in shock, I feel like, of what just happened.
That seems very plausible. I want to throw out another possibility though, and that's
Okay.
this. Walt has a very clear purpose for why he's doing all of this, and it involves family. Jesse has no clear purpose, and he has no family. he's not thinking, okay, yeah, how much do I need? Like he doesn't know how much he needs. He has no purpose that he's actually serving except his own, immediate material interests.
Hmm.
For him, you could say, well, as much as I could get, I guess, right? But I wonder if part of his discomfort in that moment is he feels probably pretty lonely. I think my partner is going to be dead, from cancer soon, and he's gonna he's gonna be done. Like his Walt is gonna only needs 11 more, and he's done. How many does Jesse need? Maybe Jesse needs 15. Well, he's not gonna get those last four, right? If Walt's not there. So Jesse's gonna have to be okay with that same amount. But for what purpose? What does it serve? And we've already seen the way that Jesse's family has rejected him.
Hmm.
So I wonder if that had something to do with it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean he's a survivor, and even so, like Walt even says, like when they see Gonzo's dead, you know, Walt grabs the gun and says, "Hey, I have a family to protect. You could just leave town," and so
Right, right,
Walt kind of
yeah.
recognizes that also.
Okay, well, so then because of that, there's a paranoia that sets in, and it affects both Walt and Jesse. So let's focus on one at a time. So Jesse immediately buys a gun, and that I was surprised at how inexperienced, I guess, Jesse was with gun. He can't even open the revolver. I mean, he doesn't. Does he even know if it's loaded or not? I mean, he's completely inept when it comes to firearms.
Yeah, it's funny because like when you first see him, you're like, oh, this guy's obviously in the drug business. He does all this, but like as we continue on with the show, you just see how pathetic he really was in that business.
Mhm.
Like he
Mhm.
was just he was a peon. He was by
Right.
no means a leader, but he tried to pretend like he was with the everything he was doing with
Yeah.
Chili P and everything. But yeah, no, he he had no idea when Walt was telling him like specifically, tell me exactly what you're gonna do, and he's holding the gun sideways. It's just yeah, he had no idea.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, he's thinking, well, no, I'll just do this rational thing. I'll just shoot him, and then that'll be it, or I'll shoot here and I'll shoot him twice or whatever. And Walt's helping him see it's going to be a lot more complicated than that.
Hmm.
It's probably going to. There are things in it that you're not going to be able to anticipate. And I think that's the lesson that they're both learning about all of this. And maybe before we get too far away from this, I did want to extrapolate a little bit from this idea because as we're watching Walt, and it's almost comical the way he thinks this is going to work out just real easily. I'm just going to do this 11 times and then going on. It made me think of how there's a kind of that's an extreme version of like what a lot of us sort of think. Well, like, oh, life is just a formula. You go to school, you do good, you get good grades so that you can get into a good college, and that'll help you get a good corporate job with safe benefits and vacation time and retirement, and then you'll be happy, right? It's a very simple formula. You just do this and you'll get happiness, right? But of course, what everyone finds is that that's life is never like that, right? Even if all those things work out, happiness doesn't just come as a result, right? There's something more to it. What happens most of the time is that things happen that you don't anticipate. Loved ones die that you didn't count on, or maybe you wanted to go into a certain field and then you find that you don't have the capacity to be able to finish the degree, or you finish the degree, you get into a job and you hate it, right? And the next thing you know, you're on a different career path, and you had spent like how much time and money pursuing that one thing. So the trap is there's always there's often, I should say, a sense that happiness is just a matter of a formula. We just do this and this and we'll get happiness. And it turns out that you see this with like exercise and diet, right? You just follow this real simple thing and you can hack your way to a real sexy body, and it's never like that, right? What it always comes back to some basic things, like, no, like, eat less and exercise more, right? You can try
Right.
and hack your way around that all you want, but when it comes down to it, those are the things that matter, right? You've got to learn to develop those, and those are difficult because those are disciplines, those are virtues you have to earn through habits and practice. And I think with happiness, we find it's a lot of the same kind of things. It's developing those virtues and finding gratitude and small things in life, and that's the sort of the wisdom of the ages. But again, we're seeing it in Walt in an extreme form again because he's got cancer hanging over him, his diagnosis. And so he's speeding everything up and it's more extreme. But in a way, my point is that I think we all engage in that same kind of thinking. And so Walt's example is elucidating for us, perhaps.
Right. And you kind of, like throughout the episode, you see the paranoia kind of grow between Walt and Jesse,
Mhm.
And I think where you really see it start for Walt is when he comes home, but Skylar's like going through the house looking for him, and he's just staring at the TV, and he's just hitting the remote,
Hmm.
and he's not even paying attention. He's just completely like blankless. Because I can't tell if that's like his conscience starting to kick in, or if he's the realness of his situation. Like, wow, I'm putting my family at risk. I'm doing all
Right.
these things that are pretty crazy. That's kind of starting to come to fruition, And then you also see it with Jesse. Jesse starts freaking out because, he's like what did he say? He had nine missed calls where they just hung up, and so like
Yeah, and I can't remember. He's probably smoking pot while he's doing this, right? Which I think makes you paranoid even more so. But remember, he starts in like that weird scene where he's envisioning those ends up being two Mormons who come knocking on his door,
right,
and he thinks of them as these bad biker gang guys, right? Like, and he's crouching, around his home, and then he runs away, and
which leads me to my next point.
okay,
Don't do drugs.
that's right, that's right. That's always that's the lesson of the show. Yeah, that's right.
Little Billy Madison in there.
There you
Or
go.
no, what wasn't Billy Madison? What was that? Was that Waterboy? Yeah, Waterboy.
Adam Sandler, classic. But the point is
Anywho,
that you're starting to see, to go back to what you were saying before, the means that they were pursuing, right? Doing the drugs in order to get the money to affect the end that they wanted, which was safety and security for them and their loved ones. The means that they chose are starting now to undermine the end that they were after. And
hmm
now they can't guarantee that now things are probably worse than they were before. And now their families are potentially at risk, and for Jesse, I don't know what do you think Jesse wants? Like what is Jesse after? We know what Walt's after. What is it that Jesse's after?
it's a good question. Because at this point of the show, like I don't know if like ultimately he was just wanting respect. Like I think he's always been kind of treated in a way where he was just looked on as this just, helper, but wasn't going to lead to anywhere. Walt flunked him out of his chemistry class when he was in high school. Like he never has really gotten to the respect. So yeah, the money's a big thing, but I think ultimately he wants to be a part of something special.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, he wanted to live a kind of gangster lifestyle. He wanted to be able to have a nice car.
hmm
We see him visiting prostitutes. Maybe he wants the prestige, feeling like a little king in a way.
Right.
But wanting to be looked upon as a little king,
hmm
and with that respect, like you said. But anyway, the point is, even that he's starting to feel like he's not gonna. That's not secure. So when he's running through his house and he finds that, he gets his bag of money. That's his little stash,
hmm
and he runs away with it. That's all he's got. That's his most prized possession right there. Going back
Right.
to Walt, he has there's that very disturbing scene where he essentially rapes Skylar, or attempts to.
Oh, do we
Yeah,
have to talk
very.
about that scene?
We have to, yeah, because
Mm.
we've seen this like progression in Walt, right, where he's becoming more aggressive in a way that at first Skylar kind of liked, in a way, but now he's now in that, yeah, it's kind of gross, but like in that moment he's not treating Skylar at all like his wife or even like a human being, and he's starting to become, the point is he's starting to become like more like an animal.
hmm
and he's not, again, supposedly this was all about his family, right? And now he's losing touch with himself, and he's starting to harm his family in various ways. And Skylar's horrified, of course. Right? She sees this glimpse of him, and she's like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, this whole episode, she was just kind of like, you could tell like half just pissed off at him for not,
Yeah,
telling her anything, and
right.
like the whole kitchen scene. That yeah, he wasn't. It looked like kind of, well, like you said, an animal. He wasn't in control. He was just
Mhm.
like he was doing things out of complete like responses to frickin', and
Yeah. Well, I
oh
think
yeah.
maybe a way to describe it is that the violence that they are getting more and more engrossed in as necessity, right? So it starts with Crazy Eight, where Walt is supposedly forced to murder him, to kill him,
Hmm.
right? He's forced to become violent. Well, now they're forced to rely on Tuco to get money for their meth, and they're witnesses to a murder, right? When Tuco kills his guy,
Hmm.
and that violence is now creeping into them, right? So now Walt is violent towards Skylar, and now Jesse's buying a gun and is ready to kill. We're just noticing this progression towards
Yeah, it's a good point.
more and more violence,
Hmm.
and that's part of the irrational process, right? I mean, like Walt is, as you said, in the scene with Crazy Eight, he wants to avoid violence, and he wants to replace the need for violence with a rational process. Well, let's just find out how we both can win here, and let's just go that way. And it doesn't work that way.
Right. And he always, after every time of like, something bad happens, they say, okay, going forward, we won't do that,
Yeah,
and then they find
right,
themselves
right,
in there. And I
right,
think,
right.
I think Walt even says, no more violence,
Yeah, he does. He
when
does. You're right. That's right.
when they decide to cook again, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's a good point. Like every single time they screw up, they try to fix it, and then by trying to fix it, they end up just screwing up even more the next time.
right. Okay. Speaking of, screw ups, Marie,
Mm.
we're getting a little bit more into Marie's psychological problem, and we
Right.
see that she's not only is she a kleptomaniac, but she's in denial about it, and you kind of feel for her
For Hank.
husband, for Hank. Yeah, he's poor guy. He's kind of desperate and certainly miserable. Also, I did notice, because you pointed this out, I did notice that in Marie's home, everything's purple.
Purple. Yep.
Everything is purple. And then
Everything. Yep.
and then I noticed this too, and I can't figure out why this was important, but when she's pouring herself some coffee, I think it's coffee, she uses Splenda sweetener,
Hmm.
and they focus in on it. Like they focus in on it. Like, why did the producer or the writer, why do they want us to see that? Oh, she's using Splenda. What does that tell us about Marie?
Um,
Fake, it's fake sugar.
right. And she's very particular about it. She lines them up. She rips it off. How she puts it in. I'll
Yeah, I did
say
notice
this
that,
is
but yeah.
yeah. So this is something that you want to. I'll say you want to remember this, that little bit throughout the show, the way that
Okay,
they
that'll
film
make more
certain
sense
things.
later.
It'll make more sense later. Put it that way.
Okay, so she's a little OCD.
Right.
The scene
Right.
the scene when Hank comes and talks to Skylar and says, "Hey, could you at least just talk to Marie?"
Hmm.
I really sympathized with Skylar. Like,
I did too.
yeah, when
I was
she's
happy
thinking,
that she stood up for herself, and she just kind of like finally let it out.
yeah, right,
Um,
right, yeah, because we picked on Skylar a little bit, but I think she's certainly justified here to say,
right.
no, look, I'm not going to play along with my sister's craziness while I'm struggling in a lot of ways here and here, and pregnant and all of this. So Skylar's obviously at the end of her ropes, but what is Skylar trying to do? She's refusing to engage in the game with her sister.
Hmm.
Her sister wants to
Right.
say, let's just pretend that nothing's wrong, right? Just let's just be friends, and you have to and you accept me as a kleptomaniac who doesn't admit that there's a problem. I don't try and fix my mistakes, and that kind of a
Hmm.
thing. Okay, what's next to talk about here? The guys are Jesse and Walt are completely terrified and believing that Tuco is going to come for them, and they think that why? Because they've witnessed a crime. I still don't understand. Like, what's Tuco's fear? That they're going to go to the police and say, "Oh, we saw this like crazed drug addict. He actually killed somebody." How's that news? Like, of course he killed somebody. And like, by the way, they've killed people too. So how would that work out
I
well
think
for
it's
them? I
just
don't understand.
I think it's just the paranoia because they're not even thinking like, hey, we're both engaging in illegal drugs here. Like we don't need the witness to a murder to be the end all be all of like, Tuco deciding to, you know, do them in. But I think it's just showing how paranoid they're getting, and they're not really rationalizing uh, their fear. It's just kind of
Mhm.
it's just culminating as they
So
go
just in
along.
the same way that Tuco just flipped on his own guy and accidentally killed him, so too he might flip on them, right? Is that
Sure.
we also get the scene where Hank is reviewing the security footage of when they stole that barrel of the chemical
Of
that they used
methylamine.
for the suit, methylamine. Yeah. And we get to see their actions through Hank's eyes. And
Hmm.
Hank says it really well. These guys have something like chemistry smarts, but they don't have any street smarts.
Correct. Yep.
And it is comical watching the video. We saw it all happen, of course, and maybe he didn't see the guy that was in the the porta potty that added another comic element to it. Yeah, when he was like, it's a barrel, you could just roll it. Why are you carrying it?
Right. And he
It
brought up
helped
a
us.
point that the methylamine is a what do you call it, a P2P cook, and apparently that wasn't like an old school way of doing things. So they hadn't seen something like that before or in a long
What does
time.
P2P mean? Do you know?
It's just the chemical for methylamine, or
Okay.
at least that's what Hank called it. Like, oh, they're doing a methylamine. Oh, P2P cook, huh? So that's
Well, surely he knows that that's an easier, better way than trying to accumulate food, right?
right,
So
right.
and
I
he
mean,
says they've now got like a big stash. They're going to be able to
hmm
make a lot of meth with
30
that.
gallons. So yeah, they got plenty.
Okay, a couple of the things from this episode. We learn for sure that the baby that Skylar's going to have is was a surprise. I
Right.
forgot to mention that in the previous in her blow up with Hank. She lets it be
Hmm.
known that this baby was not expected. That seems a little odd to me. Skylar is and Walt are both people that I wouldn't expect them to oh whoops forgot to take the birth control medicine or whatever.
Yeah, so she's what you say, almost 40. So assuming she's 39. So I'm assuming they just, you know, didn't think it was going to happen for them, and
Yeah,
especially if Walt Jr. is already like 15, 14 years old. They haven't had any oopses in a long time. So
sure, right.
the part, and we spoke a little bit about this, when Jesse pulls out the gun and he's not able to to do it, and then Walt comes in with the ricin or with the beans. He's like, you're
Yeah,
gonna kill him with
right.
beans, and he's like, no, we're gonna do ricin. And he goes, what, rice and beans?
Yeah, yeah. Great, great.
Oh, it's great.
So yeah,
It's
here's another
great.
resort to chemistry to solve their problem
Right.
with violence though. And
Hmm.
it's clever and it's entertaining how they reduce it to the poison. But it's still not clear to me how they're gonna get him to take the poison in their mind. Like what's
Yeah,
the you know
it was weird because when Jesse was telling him, "Hey, I'm just going to shoot him," Walt wanted a breakdown, step by step by
hmm
step of everything. And then with
right.
this one, Jesse's like, "Okay, well, how are we going to do this?" And he goes, "Just give it to him. You don't need much salesmanship. Just do it."
Yeah,
And and it's just like, wait, what? Like you were really strict about Jesse's idea, but this one you just, oh yeah, poison, boom. Yeah. One thing I think is important to note is I think this is the first time that you see Walt have two cell phones.
Huh.
So remember, the phone rings and he pulls out of his left pocket and nothing, was there. And then he puts it back in, pulls out of his right pocket, and then he gets the
Well,
phone call.
doesn't Jesse get him? I think Jesse gets him a burner phone.
Right. So when they started to make a little bit of money with the last one before they got Tuco, Jesse buys him the phone, but he's carrying him around and it's on himself,
Yeah.
and it's like
I think,
another.
am I recalling this right? Where his burner phone rings and Skylar like gives him a really weird look because I'm guessing it's like a ringtone she doesn't recognize.
Yeah, when she's in the tub, I think,
Yeah.
or is that later
Right,
on?
right. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and at that point she was just like, so where have you been now? And Walt could care less about her questions at that point. But yeah, the two phone thing, I'll just say to be seen in the next couple episodes.
Okay. So it ends in an odd way because Walt is ready to tell Skylar that he's ready to tell her something. And
Mm-hmm.
we're left wondering what's he gonna is he really just gonna tell her everything? And I don't think there's a right answer here. I think we're meant to be left in limbo thinking that he might not. He might be ready to tell her another lie, or he might be really willing to say, look, our lives are in danger and we need to, I need to tell you this. I don't know. But then
Yeah. I could see it go both ways, to be honest,
yeah.
because the paranoia,
then,
but
of
you
course,
never know.
If he was going to tell her that their lives were in danger, he was completely justified because of how the episode, the last scene, when he gets in the car with Jesse and Tuco's back there. We don't know Tuco very well. We don't know how he operates, but I would have thought he was the kind of guy that had people that did things for him. Now, obviously, he's lost two of his trusted guys, but if he wants to get rid of Walt and Jesse, it seems odd that he would do it himself. Is he the one? Is he the one in the SUV like hiding out? I doubt it. Right? Like he's got people doing that.
Well, remember when Hank sends the picture to Walt, that's when they see Gonzo dead also. So him and Jesse automatically think, wow, Tuco just took out Gonzo, who was also a witness to the murder that he did. Obviously, he's coming for us now. And then that's when Walt grabs the gun, goes home, and is like, hey, I got to protect my family, yada, yada, yada. And then later on, you find out that that Gonzo was moving the body and his arm got stuck and he bled out. So it wasn't a killing from Tuco. And Tuco, so
right.
So there's confusion going from both sides. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, kind of a fog of war situation.
Right. I think the next episode you get a little bit more clarity there, but that's where the freak out is coming from Walt and Jesse's side.
Okay, well we're left in a really tense moment here where Tuco drives them away and presumably going to execute them both, right?
Let's hope not, but yeah, could happen. Could happen.
All right, well, we'll have to find out what happens to Jesse and Walt here next episode. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we appreciate you listening, and we appreciate anybody who wants to share our content. We are on Twitter, and where else are we, Caleb?
Twitter, Apple, YouTube, Patreon for the subscribers that want to go to Patreon now.
Yeah. So you can follow us on any of those.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get on some other podcast platforms. I know there's been a lot of people that have been saying they don't have Apple, but we're kind of figuring this out as we go, and hopefully we'll get it further out there. But yeah, several different places to check us out.
Yeah, and we appreciate anybody who gives us a good rating and shares us with their friends, just because why not? All right, appreciate it. We'll see everybody next episode.